Welcome to Go Play Esports Podcast with Christopher Turner, Go Play founder and CEO, esports coach at the Southern University Lab, and gamer. Discussions on the emergence of esports at the K-12, collegiate, and professional level. Let's go! Let's go play.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Christopher Turner. And if you've been following me on Twitter, I've been posting nonstop today. Really excited about the show as an educator and an esports coach and founder at my school. We're going to switch it up just a minute. I'm going to bring Herman Brister into the show. He's going to be a special guest. He's the director at Southern University Laboratory School. And I'm going to bring Herman in right now. Herman, you there?
Hey, I'm here. Good morning. Good afternoon. Well, thank you
Good
for having me on the
afternoon.
show, Chris.
Oh, no, not a problem, Herman. Today we have a special guest. His name is Jameso'hagan. He specializes in esports, virtual learning, educational, and technology, one-on-one developments. He's a project planner, learning space evaluator, has some experience in doing libraries. He's a founder of the Academia Esports Podcast, advisor board for the Wisconsin High School Esports Association, and the National Association for Esports Coaches and Directors. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome James to the show. Welcome, James.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm really digging on this today. I first off, Chris, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and everybody that's listening about esports and education. But I also got to say, right now I hope everybody's safe. I hope everybody's well. I hope everybody has the opportunity to play some games and take a little time for themselves. And here's the other thing I got to say, too. I knew of Southern University growing up because I always made it a point to watch the Grambling Southern football game on television because I always had to watch the Battle of the Bands. So
the State Farm
I
Bayou Classic, baby.
And here's the thing. I went to Purdue University. I was in the marching band there for 4 years. And, so marching band culture, marching band life, Southern University has a special place in my heart about that. So thank you for having me.
That's awesome. No, thanks for coming on, man. And I wanted to have my director and principal as well, Herman, on today. Not knowing that you had a tie-in to the culture at all. Could you tell people that are listening audience a little bit more about yourself? I know I gave the intro.
Sure, yeah. I am originally from the San Francisco area, born there, but raised all over the United States. My father worked for the airline industry, so we lived in Kansas City, Louisville, a little bit in New York City, and then back to the Bay Area. And then I decided to go to Purdue University to go to college, so ended up in Indiana. And then moved up into the Chicago area, and I've kind of been all around. I do enjoy, I think I tweeted out that I wish we could have done this face-to-face down in Louisiana because I love the Bayou. I love Louisiana culture. I love the food. My mother's a pastry chef, and so I was raised on eating, beignets was not outside of the norm for us. So my mom could make up some really neat stuff. So, I love to cook. If you're following me on Twitter right now that we're all kind of indoors, I've been baking a lot. I've been making a lot of things from scratch, getting my cooking skills back up. And so, it's been that's kind of where I'm at right now. You're right. I oversee our digital virtual learning program here in the Racine Unified School District. And I've been involved in esports now for over 5 years. And what's funny is that I was telling people about 2 years ago, I would talk to people about esports in schools, and I'd go to conferences and speak about esports in schools, and I'd maybe get 5 or 10 people in a room tops. And now it's like you put esports on a conference presentation, and the room is filled with people. It's really kind of interesting. Even 2 years ago, I started my own podcast, the Academy of Esports Podcast, and I was like, is anybody even going to listen to this? And what I've quickly started to find out is that, yeah, people are starting to listen. People are starting to take notice in all of this. So I'm also completing my PhD in instructional technology and design, looking at esports and how we can harness esports into the intrinsic motivations that kids have to play video games and do it that way. So
that's amazing. So my question to you is, I know you've been in education for over 20 years. What happened within your career to make esports more so a focal point for you? I know it's not the focal point, but what made you look in that direction?
Well, I'm 44 years old, and so, my upbringing included the arcade culture, playing video games. Living most of my formative years in the Bay Area, I could literally look out my bedroom window, and Electronic Arts headquarters was right there. I had friends who were game testers at Electronic Arts, and when I got to college, one of the ways that I bonded with the guys on my floor in college was through StarCraft, so playing video games. And then when I started teaching fifth grade students back in 1999, we started off, they came to me and said, hey, we want to have a computer club. Would you be interested in running it? And that computer club quickly became a gaming club. And what was really interesting about that was not just seeing the kids who wanted to be a part of the gaming club, but also seeing the kids who were just there to hang out, just to be part of something. And that kind of stuck with me over the years, where video games were kind of like, for the longest time in education, they've been a bit of taboo, if you will. We don't want to think about, video games were seen as a waste of time. And we are finding that it's really not. And my formal launch, I guess you could say, into esports was just from having a conversation with the right person at the right time in the right place when I was working for the Rockford Public Schools in Rockford, Illinois. We had Robert Morris University is only about an hour away. And one of the superintendents saw that Robert Morris University was going to start giving scholarships for esports. And the superintendent said to me, he said, can we do something like that? Can we get involved with this so we can get access to these scholarships? And I said, it was kind of like that moment where somebody almost blesses you. When a superintendent says, can we do something? You're like, yes, we can. And so I felt blessed enough to be able to now take the reins on this and really run with it. It's almost like being told no for so long, and then somebody finally tells you yes, and that dam breaks, and you're just like, okay, let's make this happen. And so that was kind of how I formally got started into this. It was one of those things that kind of sits in the back of your mind going, man, I wish we could do this. And finally having the permission of somebody in a position of power in the school district that I was in at the time to say, yes, you can do this, and I'm going to back you on it, that was a powerful thing.
That's amazing. I guess we can say it was similar. Herman, I went into Herman's office over the summer, and he's a gamer. I'm a gamer as well, but I don't think he really knew what esports was at the time. And he gave me the open door policy like you got, and we started our program. So I wanted to kind of
in the dark.
Yeah. So I want to kind of get into as far as starting a program, could you expand upon that? And Herman, you can chime in because, when we dived into the ocean of esports, we had somewhat of a clue and we're learning every day. If you could kind of backtrack to when you first started your program and all the knowledge that you have now, what would you tell someone or what would you tell yourself? What would you change and switch up to get started?
Well, here's the great thing about my experience is that I've done this now in two good-sized urban school districts. I did this in Rockford, Illinois, and Racine, Wisconsin. And the thing about those two cities is you're talking about cities that are they have a very marginalized population. We have a lot of kids who are not, they have hard economic means. We have a high minority population. And so that's something that typically doesn't, I guess, stereotypically match up with what esports culture is kind of like. Esports culture stereotypically is white and Asian male, and you got to be able to afford that PC and that high-end gaming PC. And what we've really been able to show now twice is that esports really is for everybody. It's a matter of just aligning your resources appropriately. But the big difference between the first time I did this when we were in Rockford and the second time we did this in Racine was that I asked different questions. So the first time we did this in Rockford, the big question was, what computers do we need and what games are we going to play? And looking back at that now, those were the wrong questions to lead with. Anybody who's starting this off now, that shouldn't be the first question that you're asking. The first question I would always ask is, what are your strategic goals, whether it's of your school, of your school district, and how does esports fit into every one of them? Until people can answer that question, and that takes research, and that takes planning, and that takes thought, and that takes, getting the right people to the table and talking about how you can do all these things, you really shouldn't move too much more forward beyond that at the time. I mean, I get that budget cycles are the way they are, and I get sometimes there's a big pile of money all of a sudden just sitting around, and you're like, hey, we got to spend this. What are we going to spend it on? But realize that when you start doing this, you become responsible forever for what you have tamed. Meaning, if you're going to make this about the games and the computers that you're buying, then guess what? You're losing out on this huge educational opportunity that you have to build something that can be a tremendous asset to your community, to your students, to the parents. And a lot of people don't even realize what they got until it's gone, or they haven't really realized what the full potential of this could be. I mean, we're talking about kids who are intrinsically motivated to play video games. On numbers, we don't typically see intrinsic motivation. So, for example, Pew Research did some studies a couple of years ago, and they looked at teenagers. And they found that 97% of boys, across socioeconomics, across racial demographics, 97% of boys and 83% of girls are playing video games. What that equates to me in my mind is those are all intrinsically motivated kids playing video games. They want to play video games. Now, do they want to participate in esports? That's not always the case, because esports is different than just playing video games. Esports is organized and competitive, whereas sometimes video games is just casual. But think about this. What would our schools look like if we knew, even casually, that 97% of boys and 83% of girls love to draw, or 97% of boys and 83% of girls love to dance, or play basketball, or, pick your topic. Our schools would look so much different than what they look like today. The way we teach would look so much different. So I look at this opportunity that we have right now, the second time through, to really say, what is esports doing for us, and how can we use esports to get to where our strategic goals are? For example, in Wisconsin, in Racine Unified School District, one of our strategic goals is to be a school district of choice for Southeast Wisconsin, which means we have to have things that attract families to come here. Kids see our esports program, they go, yes, I want to be part of that. We want to go be part of the school district. That moves our strategic initiatives forward.
Wow, Herman, do you have any questions so far? I know it's a lot of information.
I would add to that, as you develop a strategic plan, look to find a champion or champions to be able to assist. I know it becomes difficult when you have one or small group of individuals trying to carry the torch. But if you find and develop individuals with that passion for gaming, it will definitely help to develop an ecosystem relative to what you're trying to build.
Yeah. And Herman, what I'll say to that is you're absolutely right. And having those key stakeholders at the table, and even those who are, who you might say to them, look, I know you're resistant about this. Come learn from us. Come explore this topic with us. Because once you have those people in who I guess may have been naysayers, once you have them hooked in and they start to see that this isn't just about playing video games, that there's something more to this than that, they become some of your biggest champions. I have one of our principals at one of our schools here in Racine. She was one who just said, yeah, that's cute. Do that esports thing. That's cute. That'll help some of our kids out. And as she starts to engage with some of her own Scholar Gamers that she